to this meeting of the City Finance Committee of April 3rd, 2023. I need to announce that you're being audio and video recorded. And we are going to start with a roll call and then have a public comment period before we move on to our public hearing to consider the FY 2024 water and sewer rates. So Laura, let's see who's here.
Councillor Maori.
Here.
Councillor Labarge. Here.
There she is.
Councillor Labarge.
Here.
Okay. Councillor Moulton.
Here.
And Councillor Nash.
Here.
Okay, looks like everybody's here from the Finance Committee. And so let's move on and see if we have any public comment. I'm going to ask people to, keep to the point, but I'm not going to, I think it's fine for us to not have the timer on at this time. So let's see if any of our public would like to make a comment. I don't see any hands. I also wanted to, in case you missed it, I said that we could have have some time for questions after the presentation by Director Lascalia and comments from the mayor. So is it anyone on any other councilor seeing hands? I am not. Okay. Okay, so we will move on. Oh, I see. Yes, Vice Chair Labarge.
Thank you. I have a question because on the agenda, the passcode was not correct. And I'm just wondering if this might be a problem why we're not getting people in. And I know that a resident had called me from Ward 1 and I gave her the passcode that was on the agenda and she called Laura and Laura told her that it was missing a number on it.
It's been corrected for at least the past couple of hours, though. Thank you, that was my attention. So, as of the time of the opening of the meeting, it's been,
Yeah.
Right. So perhaps what folks need to do is refresh.
Yes.
Yeah, they need to refresh that link and they'll make sure they get the most updated passcode and public meeting link.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. Thank you for letting us know about that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to a presentation by our Department of Public Works Director, Donna Lascalia, and I believe the mayor is also here, Mayor Chiara, to add comments to that. And then we will see if there's any questions before councilors deliberate on a recommendation to full council. Okay, Director, welcome.
excuse me, Councilor, should we officially open the hearing?
Oh, yes, and we need to officially open the hearing. Thank you.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second it.
Okay, let's vote on that one. Roll call vote.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so the public hearing is officially open and we can hear from Director Lascalia.
You started?
Hi, good evening.
Wait, Mayor.
Sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, if it's okay, I would love to just sort of give a little bit of background before Director Lascalia
oh,
goes into the
absolutely.
presentation, if that's okay.
Fine
Thank
with
you.
me.
Good evening, everybody. So in August of 2021, Coca-Cola surprised the city with the news that they were closing the bottling plant with no discussion or advance notice to the city before releasing their press release. So since then, the former mayor and that council, and since I've been mayor with this council, we have said many times that this is something that we're going to need to address because of the huge gap in the water and sewer enterprise that will be when Coke ceases operations. So a little more background, Coca-Cola has been in the city of Northampton for about 65 years. From what I've seen, I think they came into the city around 1956. That was when Mayor Cahalan was mayor, and all told 10 mayors before me have had Coke as a major industry here in Northampton, and a significant amount of the water and sewer enterprise. Unfortunately for us, but especially community, this is, it's under our watch right here where the fizz goes flat, folks. So Northampton has been a very willing and supportive home for Coca-Cola's operations for these 65 years. Our support includes modifying one of our pump stations to accommodate a significant expansion that Coca-Cola did in 2012, so just 9 years before announcing they were closing the plant. There are over 300 jobs that will be lost with the closing, and we are working with our state partners to assist with that very big loss. But what we're focused on tonight is, of course, the impact on our water and sewer enterprises, because we must address the quarter of the water and sewer enterprise that Coke represents. Coke says that they are committed to leaving, and we believe that their latest estimate of this December to fully cease operation is what is going to happen. So that is halfway through our FY24 fiscal year. So we need to plan now with the FY24 budget to account for the loss. So we're discussing tonight with Director LaScalia, Finance Director Nardi, Principal Assessor Dotrell, a quarterly base charge increase in water and sewer just to fill the hole so that we can prove revenue to the Department of Revenue. This increase doesn't even account for the increased costs we've experienced in the enterprise. If you've been following such things closely like I do, many of our surrounding communities have passed or are recommending significant rate increases this year to stabilize their enterprises because of rising costs. I'm not going to call out those communities, but just search the Gazette or Mass Live for articles the last year or two around water and sewer rates. The very stark difference between our situation and theirs is that despite the growing costs we have, which you saw in Director LaScalia's chart and you'll see again tonight, Director LaScalia has managed to decrease those budgets over the last 7 years. And for the last 3 years, they have not changed at all. That is despite the increases that she will show you. So that is remarkable fiscal management by the director. And the reason we are having this conversation instead of a different one is because Coca-Cola is leaving Northampton with a 25% hole in these enterprises. So this is a level funded budget for these enterprises. We are just trying to stabilize the revenue. The approach we're presenting of the quarterly base charge is driven by the fact that we can offer income exemption programs and possibilities that cannot be done on the usage side. So I want to repeat this because it's absolutely critical to me that that we are able to provide whatever relief is available and allowed by the state. And this allows us to take advantage of 2 income exemption programs that can only be used on base charges. So again, as I said the other night, we don't bring this to you lightly. I and the mayor's office, Director LaScalia, have been working very hard for over a year since the announcement and have worked every angle and avenue. We've been working with the state delegation, and I want to thank Senator Comerford and Representative Sabadosa. I actually have a statement from them, and I'll read in a moment. They have been doing remarkable work with us, and they have been making all sorts of connections and trying to help every way that they can. The new Governor Healy has been briefed. The city has met with the Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, Economic Development Secretary Howe, Labor and Workforce Development Secretary Jones, and other high-level state officials, and they are engaged in working on aspects of the closure and the next use of the plant. I'm also working with Congressman McGovern and Senator Markey and Senator Warren, and have had multiple meetings and conversations with them and their staff. So we have been doing extensive research around this, and again, working on every component and angle that we can of this. And while we've been doing this, we engaged with Ty and Bond to study the impact and model out for us how we can replace the revenue that Coke is taking. So before I hand this over to Director LaScalia, let me read this statement that is from, this is a joint statement from Senator Joe Comerford, who's Hampshire Franklin Worcester District, and Representative Lindsay Sabadosa of the 1st Hampshire District. They say, "We are proud to be working alongside Mayor Shara and her team in the city of Northampton as it works to mitigate the impact of the planned departure of Coca-Cola, currently scheduled for December 2023. The priority is to assist the more than 300 employees affected by the exit, followed closely by the need to help the city identify and attract a new tenant for this unique facility. In this effort, we are joined by key representatives of the Healy Driscoll administration, led by Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, and joined by Secretary Howe of the Executive Office of Economic Development and Secretary Jones of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Finally, Mayor Shara has engaged United States Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, 2nd Congressional District, along with the offices of Senators Markey and Warren to assist at the federal level. Every elected official representing Northampton is actively engaged in a sincere effort to minimize the impact of this grave challenge to the city of Northampton's economy. So I thank Senator Comerford and Representative Sabadoza for sharing that statement. They wanted to be here this evening. I think Senator Comerford has a town hall that she's doing. They couldn't be here. So they asked that we read that statement just to impress upon the people of Northampton how very hard they and all of us are working on this issue. So with that, I will pass it over to Director LaScalia and she will go over the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening to everyone. And we've got a presentation prepared for tonight. We did go over this at City Council a few nights ago. So for those of you who have already seen this, please bear with me and we will do a little bit of a review here. Just waiting for the finance director to share her screen and we'll get started. So this presentation will cover an overview of the water and sewer and wastewater systems and their operation. It will review the recent capital projects and future capital projects for both enterprises. I'll give an explanation of Coca-Cola's water and sewer usage and the revenue impacts of both their presence and their departure on both utilities. We'll review historic utility rates and we'll look at proposed FY24 utility rates and customer impacts. So next slide, please. So this is an overview of our water supply system. Highlights include 3 surface water reservoirs. They are Ryan, West Whately, and Mountain Street, which together contain over 1 billion gallons of water. We have a water treatment plant in Williamsburg, which flows about 3 million gallons a day to the city through 11 miles of transmission mains, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. We have 2 wells at Clark Street and Spring Street. We have 135 miles of distribution mains, and all of our operations are closely monitored and regulated by the Department of Environmental Protection. Next slide, please. These are the employees who make our water. They are led by Water Superintendent Keith Snape and Chief Water Treatment Plant Operator Ian Henderson. We have 16 full-time positions and portions of other salaries like engineers or mechanics, a portion of my salary, also paid out of the enterprise. The staff who oversee the distribution system have commercial driver's license, hoisting engineer license, and they're licensed water distribution operators through the Commonwealth. Our water treatment plant operators are similarly licensed on the treatment side. Very difficult and technically challenging licensing processes. We are very fortunate to have long tenured staff with us. Our general foreman, John Bean, has 17 years of service to the city. Our meter technician, Juan Masonette, 17 years. These folks are highly competent professionals with very, very difficult to get licenses, and they have served the city well. And they work under extremely adverse conditions, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The night that I first did this presentation, they worked all night to change out a water valve on Belmont Avenue. And usually it's, in a snowstorm or when it's 100 degrees out or something. So just a really good team, and we're fortunate to have them. Next slide, please. So this is a slide to reflect the scale of our operation. We flowed in 2022, 948 million gallons of water into the city. Note the pie chart on the right. Most of our usage is due to residential connections, and we have about 9,500 total meter connections within the city. Next slide, please. This table shows 7 years of water enterprise budgets. The water enterprise is a closed financial system. That means that the revenue we get needs to equal the expenses out. We must produce a balanced budget every year. There is no general fund supplement. So the enterprise is entirely supported by its users. I want to call your attention to the numbers in yellow at the bottom of the table. That is the revenue that we projected to take in, and those were also our expenses. All of the items in the table on the left-hand side make up that bottom line number in yellow. I also want to call your attention to the numbers on the far right-hand side in the bottom in the darker yellow, FY21, FY22, and FY23. Completely unchanged. So what we did when we built these budgets is we managed to that bottom line number by moving around kind of what we spent in various categories within the enterprise, but the bottom line did not change. I also want to call your attention to the debt service line. The debt service within the enterprise has been high since 2006 because of the construction of the water treatment plant. That debt service does not fall off of the debt schedule until 2028. So though it is declining sort of year over year in a small way, it does not really fully fall off in any sort of appreciable way until 2028. So, you know, mathematically, that is a very significant percentage of this enterprise. Next slide, please. Capital projects within water over the last 7 years total nearly $6.4 million. I want to call your attention to the picture on the right-hand side. That's transmission main work on Route 9 as part of improvements to our Leeds water system. Work there will be continuing this spring after a winter hiatus. I also want to call your attention to design work for both our transmission mains and the Ryan and West Whately dams, which I will discuss in a moment. Since 2013, we have replaced 28,000 linear feet of water main within the city. That's 5.3 miles of water main. Next slide, please. So we're looking at some fairly significant capital projects within water within the water enterprise over the next 5 years. Different communities have different needs. We have a very extensive system, and these are our most pressing needs. I talked about some of these projects when we did our capital presentation some weeks ago. But starting on the left-hand side, Ryan Reservoir and West Whately Reservoir dam rehabilitation. This is a project to increase the flood control capacity to prevent the overtopping of the dams to meet Office of Dam Safety requirements. You know, we're getting more frequent and intense storms, and it is critical that this work proceed. Ryan was built in the early 1970s. It holds 717.7 million gallons of water. West Whately was constructed in 1901, holds 17.6 million. And together, our three reservoirs hold over 1 billion gallons of water. Next project is Main Street. So we have two water mains on Main Street. We have a 16-inch cast iron from 1914 and a 12-inch cast iron from 1871. So the limits of work for the Main Street water reconstruction are from just beyond the intersection of Main Street and West Street to the intersection of Main with Holly and Market Street. We're also going to be doing work on all intersecting side streets, so New South, Masonic, Crafts, Old South, Gothic, Center, King, Pleasant, Market, Holly, and we're also going to be running about 700 feet up State Street to Center Street. The cast iron is to be replaced with ductile iron. Interestingly, the price of ductile iron has increased for 12-inch from about $125 a linear foot in 2018 to about $200 a linear foot in 2022. It's important to note that this project is being driven by the reconstruction of Main Street. We cannot build a new road on top of water mains that are over 100 years old without damaging them. So the water mains are fine. They are serviceable. If the construction were not happening, this is not a project that we would be doing. But because of the reconstruction, that is driving our priority here. Next project is the transmission main. We have two transmission mains which serve the city. One is a 20-inch and one is a 36-inch. We are looking to reconstruct the 20-inch from the Mountain Street Reservoir to the intersection of Mountain Street, High Street, and Hatfield Street in Williamsburg. The 20-inch transmission main follows Beaver Brook and is largely inaccessible. It is over 100 years old. Mountain Street is being reconstructed as part of a TIP project. And the 20-inch we're looking to replace with a 24-inch. The road is going to be torn up. So again, much like Main Street, our priority here is being driven by this reconstruction. We don't want to see a new road in place, and we've missed our opportunity to put our transmission main in it. Lastly, water supply system asset management plan. I mentioned that our operations are closely monitored and regulated by DEP. DEP required an update from our last asset management plan, which was last done in 2013. This plan is an assessment of the current status of our assets and recommended improvements to them. It totals $45 million over 10 years. We are recommending spending about $7 million over 5 years, and proposed projects will include dismantling the Audubon, Leeds, and Turkey Hill water storage tanks, which are not in use or will not be in use. The Audubon tank in particular is in use right now, but once we finalize our work on the Leeds project I talked about earlier, that tank can be decommissioned. We also want to address fire flow issues on North King Street, Coles Meadow Road, and Laurel Park, looking to reconstruct the water main on Mount Tom Road or Route 5, which serves PCA, and reconstruction of the 16-inch line on Federal Street and College Lane. Excuse me, next slide, please. So this is not a comprehensive list of our expenses, but just indicative of the current economic climate in which we're operating. We've seen sharp increases in things that are critical to our operation. So these are examples of fixed expenses within the enterprise, just things that we must buy. 2023 is not yet complete, but there was a time when we typically said, we need about 3%. We need to look at like a 3% increase in the cost of goods and services year over year. That 3% number no longer holds true. You can see the percentage increases that we're looking at for just, a handful of things here over the last couple of years. I talked a little bit earlier about the price of ductile iron, which is what, the pipes that our water flows through. So again, we're seeing some very difficult cost increases. Next slide, please. So the mayor mentioned Coca-Cola's departure, which is expected in the coming months. When Coca-Cola informed us that they were leaving, we engaged the engineering firm Time Bond to assist us in an analysis of the enterprise, Coca-Cola's effect on it, while here and not here, our rate structure, and kind of recommendations about how to best move forward. So as we move through the presentation, you will see some of Time Bond's work reflected on these slides. This chart shows Coca-Cola's relatively stable water usage over several years. Note that they are about 25% of our overall usage within the city. FY24, which begins July 1st, is sort of unknown at this point, but in order to have a visual representation, we have pegged it at 50% of their current usage. And then for the purposes of FY25, it goes to 0. I mentioned on Thursday night that I reviewed Coca-Cola's usage for February, and their usage was the lowest that I had seen since pandemic-related disruptions in 2020. I typically expect the usage of about 15 to 20 million gallons a month from them. They were down to 12.9 million gallons in February. Interestingly, I have preliminary March numbers, and they are back up to 16 million gallons. So their usage is sort of all over the place, and it's a little bit difficult to gauge. So that's just kind of the most recent data that I have. Next slide, please. So mathematically, declining usage translates to declining revenue. So again, you saw the stable usage on the last slide. You see stable revenue on this slide. Now, the water enterprise, as we saw in previous slide, is roughly $6.9 million. So we're looking at a fairly stable revenue stream here of around $1.6 million, which we expect to decline by 50% in the coming fiscal year and then go to zero in FY25. So their impact to our system cannot be overstated. Okay, so switching gears now to the sewer and wastewater system. Highlights of the system include our wastewater treatment plant on Hockenham Road, excuse me, which treats about 4 million gallons of wastewater each day. We have 7 pump stations, which pump wastewater through the system where it can't flow by gravity. We have 110 miles of sewer mains. Note at the top of the map, we have an interconnection to Williamsburg. We receive and treat Williamsburg's wastewater, about 100,000 gallons of it per day. So like water, all of our operations are closely monitored and permitted by both EPA and DEP. Next slide, please. So these are the employees who operate our sewer collection system and our wastewater treatment plant. We have 21 full-time positions and portions of other salaries like engineers, mechanics, portion of my salary, also paid out of the enterprise. The staff who operate the sewer collection system have commercial driver's licenses. They are hoisting engineers. The staff at the wastewater treatment plant are licensed by the state as wastewater operators, which, much like water, is a very technically challenging and demanding licensing process. We're very fortunate to have long tenured staff with us. Mike Antosh, the highway superintendent who oversees the collection system, been with the city for 36 years. Brendan Shea, sewer general foreman, 13 years. Dale Small, superintendent down at the wastewater treatment plant, 35 years of service to the city. Renee Lamond, wastewater treatment plant operator, 22 years. So just like in water, highly competent, professional, licensed staff. These folks work under some really, really difficult conditions. They do an incredible job for us. Next slide, please. This slide shows the scale of this operation. 2022 number represents 1.5 billion gallons of wastewater. You may notice more wastewater treated than water flowing from the water treatment plant. This is because of inflow and infiltration. Inflow is water which flows to the sewer system through cross connections with drains. Infiltration is groundwater which enters sewer pipes through holes or joint failures. We engage in very aggressive inflow and infiltration reduction measures in accordance with Department of Environmental Protection requirements, but there's obviously a huge financial benefit to doing so. Excuse me, I'm just going to mute for a second. Excuse me. This table shows the sewer enterprise budget. Sewer, like water, is a closed financial system. Revenue in has to equal expenses out. There is no general fund supplement. So this, again, like water, is an entirely user-supported system. Call your attention, just like in water, to the numbers in yellow at the bottom of this table. They have been declining year over year. And pay particular attention to FY21, 22, and 23, where those bottom line numbers have not changed. So this is an identical scenario to water, where we have been managing to a very static bottom line, and just sort of moving around the budget within the budget to hit that bottom line, which has not changed. Pay particular attention here to debt service. This is a little bit of a different scenario than water. We have minor debt service from past projects, which is going to jump by nearly $1 million due to the recently completed phase 1 wastewater treatment plant upgrades. That debt service is going to partially hit us in FY24 and be fully visible by FY25. As we continue upgrades to our plant, which I'll talk about in a moment, more debt service will be added, further impacting what has been a relatively sort of low budget line here within the overall enterprise. But of course, this is going to, kind of hurt our bottom line, which has been relatively static. Okay, next slide, please. So are some of our sewer capital projects over the last 7 years. We've undertaken the replacement of several sewer mains, but particular projects of note are sewer lining. Many of our sewers are buried quite deep, more than 8 feet. So digging such a deep trench is a very costly undertaking. So we use a lining process, which is basically the installation of a new pipe within an existing pipe, and it's cured by UV light. We have many sewers in the city which are made of vitreous clay, which had a joint every 3 feet. So, it's sort of an uneven kind of rough interior surface. Some of the sewers are made of brick, including the sewer on King Street. It's 48-inch brick, and it runs from Stop and Shop all the way down to the wastewater treatment plant. So sewer lining improves the flow capacity within these older sewers by creating a smooth surface that bridges defects with a structural lining. We recently did such sewer lining work at the railroad crossing on Damon Road and on South Main Street. So very, very effective way to repair some of the oldest, most inaccessible infrastructure in the city. I also want to call your attention to the cost of the phase 1 wastewater treatment plant upgrades, which were mandated by DEP. So we have a new emergency generator, new emergency standby systems, new utility distribution and process upgrades. And I'll also call your attention to the design cost for the phase 2 upgrades, which I will talk about on the next slide. So future capital projects in sewer, we have 3 big future projects, wastewater treatment plant phase 2. So we're looking to upgrade our solids management, HVAC plumbing and processing improvements in the sludge dewatering building, our plant water system, and SCADA, which is supervisory control and data acquisition. It's sort of operational control for all of our systems. We're looking to bid this project in mid-April, and that will be funded through, just like phase 1, through the state revolving fund. Next project is Mount Tom Road, also called Island Street and William Street pump stations. We have 7 pump stations throughout the city, focusing on these 2 first. It will be an overhaul of pumps and electrical distribution. And then third project, sewer relining. I talked a little bit about that process. We're focusing our efforts in Ward 5, and the plan is to address sewers on Milton Street and Ormond Drive, and also Elm Street in the vicinity of the high school. Next slide, please. So like water, this is not a comprehensive list of expenses, but it is indicative of the current economic climate. We've seen sharp increases in things that are critical to our operation. These are examples of fixed expenses within the enterprise. 2023 is not complete. I have limited information for 2024, but wanted to provide you sort of the numbers that I do have. Note that our polymer cost will increase due to phase 2 upgrades and improvements to how we process sludge. But again, sort of fixed expenses here that really saw some significant increases over the past several years. Next slide, please. So like in water, slide prepared by Ty and Bond, and this is looking at the impact of Coca-Cola's sewer usage as sort of overall with the city's usage. So you can see relatively stable sewer usage over several years, ranging between 18 and 23%, so roughly 20% of our sewer usage overall. Like with water, FY24 is estimated at 50%, and then it goes to zero in FY25. So much like water, the usage for February was among the lowest I've seen. Usage for March rebounded somewhat. Next slide, please. So just like in water, mathematically, this declining usage translates to declining revenue. So their very stable usage has created, a stable revenue stream, and we expect that to decline by 50% in the coming fiscal year, and go to zero in FY25. And again, I just want to repeat, FY24 is an unknown. They tell us December, but it's unclear if we will see sort of scaled operations from them, if we will see kind of a hard stop, or if we will see some sort of a ramp down. We need to sort of pick a number, and that's what you're seeing in front of you, but that is our best estimate at this point, and certainly not rooted in fact. Next slide, please. So the table you see represents historic water and sewer rates. We're starting in FY17 because in FY17, a new rate structure was positively voted on by council and went into effect. So we're displaying all data after that time. So water rates are structured as follows. There is a quarterly base rate, and that is based on meter size. So the quarterly base rate is based on the concept of the city's ability to serve. The larger your water meter, the more water you could potentially use. And city or any utility has an obligation to provide you with the water that you may need, whether you use it or not. That's the concept behind kind of a fixed rate. So that's part of the water fee. Then there are usage rates for water, and they are based on meter size and your overall usage. We bill by 100 cubic feet, and one CCF, or also called a CCF, one CCF is equal to 748 gallons of water. Sewer is based on 80% of water usage to account for consumption and irrigation, things like filling a pool, washing your car, washing your house, watering your lawn. We meter sewer only in very rare circumstances. It's only a handful of places in the city that have a sewer meter. Interestingly, Coca-Cola is one of those places. So for sewer, metered and unmetered rates are the same. The philosophy of water and sewer rates is that it is incumbent upon the utility to recover the complete cost of service. And that includes capital investment. So when we think about how are we setting these rates? How much revenue are we trying to raise? We are not only trying to cover sort of the cost of doing business, but we are also trying to cover the cost of investment in the system so that we can continue to provide uninterrupted service. I do want to point out the remarkable rate stability and no change in 4 of 6 years. There was a very comprehensive rate study done for FY17, and in that rate study, there was a recommendation of consistent increases year over year, 2% in water, 3% in sewer. As you can see by what's in front of you, those increases did not happen, and the increases that did happen were quite modest. We have been static since FY20. FY20 was the last time that rates have moved within the city. Next slide, please. So because a portion of the water charge is based on meter size, just a quick explanation of how meters are sized and examples of where a particular meter would be installed. Most typical residential households have a 5/8 meter. Most businesses have a 1-inch meter or larger. We have one 8-inch meter in the city, and that is at Coca-Cola. So meters are sized by flow. That means what is the potential flow rate for a particular structure? How much water will you require? A typical house with a 5/8 meter flows 25 gallons per minute. A 1-inch meter will flow 55 gallons a meter. So if you have the wrong size meter in your home or place of business, you will end up with low water pressure. If multiple people are sort of calling for water simultaneously, the meter will not be able to allow the water to pass through to fulfill those requests. So that's kind of just briefly how we size a meter and why you would have a different type meter in different sorts of organizations. Next slide, please. So proposed water rates. Again, we engaged the Time Bond to understand the impacts of the Coca-Cola departure and how we might adjust our water rates to compensate for the lost revenue. This table displays proposed FY24 rates compared to FY23 rates. So if we read from the bottom up, what you will see is that the usage rates or consumption charges are unchanged. They are exactly the same year over year. What has changed is the quarterly base charges, which have increased. Next slide, please. This is the distribution of revenue within the water enterprise, and this is sort of the crux of the explanation of what we are trying to achieve with our new proposed rates. There are 3 components to revenue within the water enterprise. We have our fixed revenue, which is quarterly base charges. We have our usage, which is consumption or variable revenue, and then we have something called non-rate revenue. So non-rate revenue would be like the sale of scrap metal, or if we inspect a vac flow device, if we sell a permit, if we sell a vehicle, just kind of things that are not necessarily recurring and are not associated with water usage or fixed charges. So though the quarterly base charge is increasing, I want to call your attention to the dark green total revenue line, which shows that, again, though rates are proposed to increase, this is a level funded budget. The revenue we are projecting to bring in FY24 is identical to the revenue we projected to bring in FY23. We are simply redistributing the revenue stream within the enterprise, understanding that we have a cost to serve the city irrespective of usage. So, utility rate designs have both fixed and variable charge. We are using those charges to redistribute how we collect revenue within the enterprise. So you can see the numbers in the light green in the FY24 column look a little bit different than the numbers in the FY23 column, because again, we are redistributing that revenue from a consumption-based model to a more fixed charge model. Next slide, please. So this is a table of our proposed SOAR rates, again, with Time Bond's assistance. So the table displays FY24 proposed rates compared to FY23. So I will start by saying that I already mentioned that that we do not meter SOAR. SOAR is billed at 80% of water consumption. So, this is a new quarterly base charge in sewer, and it is based on the water meter size. This does not mean that folks have a sewer meter in their house, or we will be installing a new meter. We are using the water meter to bill for sewer. And again, it is based on the concept of the city's ability to serve. It is a fixed charge. It is irrespective of the volume or strength of the wastewater. It is the utility has an obligation to take and treat the wastewater generated in your house. And we can use your water meter to sort of understand what you could potentially be sending to us. And that's how we sort of land on these numbers, is based on what sort of a water user are you. That will show us what sort of a sewer user you are. Next slide, please. So this is our sewer revenue distribution. Looks very similar to kind of set up the same way as our water revenue distribution. There are 4 components to revenue within the sewer enterprise. We have our quarterly base charges, which did not exist in FY23, and which we are recommending for approval in FY24. So that's going to be our fixed revenue. Then we have consumption or usage charges, which are variable. We have Williamsburg, because as I mentioned, we receive and treat Williamsburg's wastewater. And then again, just like in water, we have our non-rate revenue. Excuse me. So again, like in water, I'll call your attention to the dark green total revenue line, identical numbers for FY23 and FY24. You can see that we are redistributing how we collect revenue within the sewer enterprise, but the bottom line is not changing. Next slide, please. So this is one of a series of slides that Ty and Bond prepared for us, the first of a handful, that shows what the annual user cost impacts will be by meter size for FY24 with our recommended increases. So in water, there is already a quarterly base charge. So what you are seeing in this chart is the increase only. So it's sort of a fixed increase. This is assuming that your usage stays the same based on your meter size. And this is how much the bill by meter size would go up. Underneath in sewer, there is no quarterly base charge right now in FY23. So the numbers in this table are representing new charges. Next slide, please. So we are mindful of the financial impact of our proposed water and sewer rates. And so want to call your attention to things which may be available to help folks who need assistance with this. I believe that the assessor may be here to speak in more detail to these programs. So I will turn it over to him if he is here.
He was here. He was having. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him. Wait, where'd he go?
Oh, there he is. I see him. Oh, he needs to get here. We go. I'm asking him to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
It wouldn't let me unmute. So
Ah,
you can hear me now. Okay, there we go.
welcome,
All right.
assessor.
So yes. So seniors who own their homes and who also reside in the home they own, and who fall below the area-wide median income limit as figured by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, can qualify for the CPA exemption. And the CPA exemption, in addition to exempting the Community Preservation Act tax per local option, we also exempt the what used to be called the meter fees, but the what's the terminology now we're using?
Quarterly
The water
base
and
rate.
sewer quarterly base charges, and also half the stormwater fees. So the senior portion of that, you have to be 60 at the very least. For folks who are under 60 years old, it's the area-wide low income threshold. which was $51,072 last year for fiscal year 23. And for the senior portion of that, the income limit was $63,840. So that is a pretty generous income limit for this exemption. In addition, for low-income seniors that are 65 and over, there is the chance that they could qualify for the 41C exemption, which is $1,000 off. And if you qualify for that, you're automatically given the CPA exemption as well. Now, are there any questions that anyone would like to ask?
Thank you, Mark.
If you could stick around, Assessor, maybe we'll get through the presentation and see. We probably could use you for questions from our public.
Okay. These are the same exemptions that have been around for years. And,
Okay.
You know, we just started taking applications for fiscal year 24 this year. I will again have the fiscal year 4 increments, but the state has not released them yet.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so this slide shows annual user cost impacts for a typical residential customer. So assuming that usage stays the same year over year, the number in blue on the right-hand side and the table at the top, it shows the annual increase. So $128 in water, $115 in sewer. That's an annual increase. Comes out to about $10 a month for the average residential customer. The table on the bottom of the page shows the amount of increase, 0, with the income exemption discount, which the assessor just spoke to. So there actually is no increase if you qualify for one of the programs that we just spoke about. For every other typical residential user, it's roughly a $20 a month increase for the combined utilities, $10 for water, $10 for sewer. Next slide, please. So another slide provided by Ty and Bond for us. This is showing impacts to average commercial customers by meter size. As meter size increases, the cost does increase, and those annual increases are shown in blue on the right-hand side of each table by meter size. Next slide, please. So a lot of folks often ask us, well, how do your rates compare to other communities? This is sort of a difficult question because every community is different. Every community has different infrastructure. Every community has different capital needs. So this is a little bit like comparing apples and oranges, but nonetheless, we did ask Ty and Bond to prepare this for us. So took sort of other communities in the region and kind of put us, put our rates, our current rates and our proposed 2024 rates kind of up against theirs. And you can see kind of the table on the left for water and the table on the right for sewer. I will call your attention to the income exemption discount programs, which do have quite an impact on rates. Next slide, please. So we'll end with a picture of the West Whately Reservoir and Dam. In the distance is the spillway to Ryan Reservoir, which I talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak about our extensive utility operations. I'd like to finish by thanking our employees for their service to the city. I don't get a lot of opportunities to kind of stand up publicly and thank the folks who work at the DPW for their service, but they are a really incredible bunch of people, and I'm very grateful and honored to lead that department. Considerable work goes into putting together a presentation like this, and considerable work went into trying to determine how to best move forward as Coca-Cola departs the city. Their departure is the equivalent of the loss of more than 3,400 households. So this is a really devastating impact on our water and sewer enterprises. I also, in closing, just want to mention that we looked at a variety of ways to kind of move rates around here to achieve just revenue stability. We're not, though rates are proposed to increase again, this is a level funded budget. The price of everything is going up, and we are level funding the budget again for the 4th year in a row. We looked at raising usage rates to compensate for the loss of Coca-Cola's revenue. We were looking at a mid to high 30% in water and a mid to high 20% in sewer if we were to do this based off usage rates, and we would have no way to kind of use those programs that the assessor spoke about to help people offset that. We also looked at a combination of a base rate and usage rate increase. But high usage rates are a disincentive to usage. And what we want to be very careful of here is, not creating a scenario where we create a disincentive to consume water. Variable revenue within these enterprises at a time like this is actually quite unstable for us, and is quite dangerous for us, as we have fixed expenses to maintain and support and invest in our infrastructure that are not negotiable, irrespective of usage. So for the folks on the call, I just want to stress that we looked at a lot of different alternatives, and we are recommending the one that we think is of best benefit to the city. So thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Director. Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to make one pointer to clarify something, which is I know we spent time, Director Lascelles, you spent time in that presentation talking about capital projects. I just want to make sure that people understand that those capital projects don't impact the operating of the enterprise. So, for example, the Main Street water main project, if we didn't do that project, which we need to do with the reconstruction of Main Street, it would have zero impact on the fact that we need to stabilize this enterprise. So it was sort of, more of her way to talk about the complexity and sort of the scope of water and sewer, but that is not something that impacts the daily operation, which is what the revenue replacement is needed for.
Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions or comments. I would say, let's just a reminder that questions and comments need to be relevant. It's a public hearing and they need to be relevant to the subject at hand, which is the 2024 water sewer rates. And I would ask public to kind of keep their comments brief, but I'm not going to at this point put on a timer or anything. So I see some hands, and councilors, we're going to go on to discuss the order after we close the public hearing as well. So we'll have time to discuss that. And we can also, of course, ask questions, but I don't see hands from councilors. So I'm going to move on to, I see Bob Reckman has his hands up. I'm going to unmute you, Bob, and please state your city. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, great, thank you. I'm Bob Reckman. I used to be the chairman of the Board of Public Works of the city of Northampton. And so I know a lot about the history of setting water rates that we did 20 years ago.
Right. Bob, are you in Northampton right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. You're a Northampton resident, yeah.
Yeah, and so when we knew that we were going to have to build the water treatment plant that we're paying down now, we realized we had to build up a little kitty in our savings in our reserve account because we're going to have this big construction expense. So we proactively raised rates in anticipation of this big expense which was coming up. And we were able to do that because we knew we were going to have to do it. But in this case, we simply don't have that possibility because it's like, it really is a shame, but I think this is a perfect example of wise fiscal stewardship by our elected leaders. That's all.
Thank you. And thank you for your service to our community.
You're welcome.
Nice to meet you virtually. Let's see. Thank you. All right, Joanne's iPad. I'm going to unmute you. Can you unmute yourself? Joanne's iPad. Are you there, Joanne? Maybe I will circle back to you. All right, I'm gonna circle back to Joanne. Any other, I see Counselor Jarrett. I'm gonna unmute you. Can you yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Councilor Maori. Alex Jarrett, City for Ward 5. My question is for the assessor about the exemptions. I was curious if a homeowner has someone who lives with them that is not a homeowner, does that count in? They have to all submit their information together in order, and it would be however many number of people in the household. Is that correct?
That is correct. So if let's use the CPA exemption for example. For a one-person household, the limit is $63,840. If there's a senior in the home, and $72,960 for a two-person household. And I have listings anyway from the state all the way up to an 8-person household, which is $820,380. Does that answer your question, sir?
Sorry, I muted Counselor Jarrett.
Or
Just
you have more?
there was that weird sound. Did you
Yeah.
all hear that? That was
I did
coming.
hear it.
Counselor Jarrett, there's something going on with your sound. So apologies that I muted it so that we could hear Mark.
Right, I thought it was coming from the assessors, so I didn't mute, but yes. But Counselor Jarrett, if you'd like to unmute briefly to follow up, that's fine too.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We'll tolerate it for your follow-up.
To headphones here. But my follow-up is multifamilies. If there's a 2-family house and then can that apply at all, or is it if you include everyone who lives in the 2-family house and it's owner occupied?
Then it depends. So if you have people that are all technically the same family, there's a way. The laws are so vague that you can count them all together. But if let's say you're the landlord and you're leasing to somebody else on the other side, and they do not qualify, then you get half the exemption.
Half
But
the exemption.
so hold on. Let me go back. I'm sorry. The law is different for the CPA exemption. For the CPA exemption, if your total income, their rent. So if your total income is still below that limit, then you get the full exemption. For the 41C exemption, it's different. It would be you don't get $500 as the full 1,000.
Thank you for that clarification.
I see our,
You're welcome.
okay. Any other, Counselor Jarrett, you're set, I think. And okay.
Helen has
Yes,
some
yes,
additional
I saw that. Yeah,
So
I
this
think
is,
I unmuted you. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. So this is in part in response to a question that Councilor Jarrett asked at council the other day, but there is another aspect of assistance on this front that we are investigating, and we've sort of just begun to figure it out. And I'm gonna, because I like acronyms, it's called LIWAP. Hang on, it's the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. And it helps eligible households pay water and sewer bills to restore or maintain access to drinking water and wastewater services, and is funded through a couple of federal appropriations. And it serves income eligible customers who are either directly billed for their services, but there is also, and I actually found the instructions for how groups like Community Action Pioneer Valley can do it, also for renters. So if you don't directly get your water bill in as a renter, it's part of your rent, or there's some other math that works for in your building, there is a way to work with someone like Community Action Pioneer Valley to contact your landlord and figure out the percent of your apartment in that building, et cetera. So anyone who qualifies for heating assistance automatically qualifies for LIWAP. And so we will absolutely work to become experts in this. We're just really sort of learning about this program. But I was able to confirm with former Mayor Higgins at Community Action Pioneer Valley that they do administer this program. And it also seems to be pretty available. For example, a household of 4 can have an annualized gross income of up to $78,751. And there's a whole table that I'm looking at as well here. So it's nice to know, Councilor Jarrett, that there is in fact some other program for folks that are not directly billed as a homeowner or as a renter. So we will continue to look into this to make sure that we can help as many people as possible who need it with this increase.
Thank you for that, Alan. And if you could send that information, I'll try to remember that acronym, but that would be useful to know when we're talking to constituents. So that's excellent information and heartening. And if you could pass that along, that would be great. Let's see. Yeah, I see Mary Connor, and if I don't see someone, counselors let me know, but that's who I see with their hand up right now. Mary, if you, let's see. Oh, there you go. I think I unmuted you. Can you unmute? No, try now. No, okay.
Yeah.
And then if you could just state your town or city. And
Yeah,
then-
I'm Mary Connor, resident of Northampton, Ward 1. And my question was, well, first, just to the director and your team, what you do is so important and amazing. And I think water and sewer are just hugely important, whatever we have to pay for it. I am curious, when you put up the rates and comparisons, like, what is the impact of this in addition to like the tax assessment increases on the economic development plan? Like, how will this affect our ability to attract new businesses? There's been a lot of conversation about the loss of, the most major contributor. So yeah, I'm curious to hear more about how you're thinking about how this affects our ability to attract new commercial investment.
Thank you. Whoever would like to answer that one, Mayor Sciarra.
I and Alan can jump in too with thoughts. Obviously that is something that we are concerned about, and we very much would like to get someone into the Coke plant and reuse or repurpose that building. The ideal situation, of course, would be another bottler or someone who used water and sewer to a similar extent that they do. So we are mindful of that, but I have to stabilize this enterprise as well. So, we feel like this is the most reasonable way that we can do this with the only exemptions and the sort of the hopefully the least harmful impact to the community and to the residents. So, we are certainly mindful of it, and I thank you for bringing it up.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I see Linda. Going to unmute you. Could you try to unmute yourself, Linda?
Okay,
Thank you.
that
And could you
working?
yeah, and if you would just state your town or city, and then you can make a
I'm
comment
in
or ask
Ward
a
5
question.
in Florence. And my question is, when you get someone into the Coke plant to replace them, do our rates return to their old position?
Okay, thank you, Linda. I'm going to direct that one, I guess, to Mayor Shara and if Alan wants to speak to that as well.
Yeah, well, so we will certainly review it again. It depends on who comes into that plant, right? So if one of the things that we're working so hard on with this, with the state delegation and with our federal partners is to try and figure out how we can best market this property to have it have a similar use and a similar usage of water and sewer. But we don't own the property and we don't actually control who they sell it to. We are just doing everything in our power to try and influence that and see if they will partner with us. They haven't been terribly willing, but do everything that we can to try and attract a viable and attractive buyer for them that will assist us in what our needs are. So we have to wait and see what the situation is, and we'll certainly review it when there's a new tenant in the plant.
So can I continue?
Yes, why don't you follow up? If you have a follow-up question.
If that were to be, for example, transition to a multi-housing position or something that had multiple tenants and consumptions of our products, that also would be influencing the rates that we pay. Is that correct? So it could potentially still lower the rates for the rest of the people that we're compensating for the loss of Coke.
Let me see if I understand your question with this. So do you mean, like, let's say it became housing that had 100 units in it? Is that what you mean?
That's correct.
So Director Niscali can speak to this better than I can. And she actually gave the number of how many households this represents a loss for. It wouldn't touch Coca-Cola's usage.
3,400, yeah.
Oh.
So, you know, we obviously will look at whatever the situation is and model it out and figure out what it is, but I'm not sure, other than another bottling plant, I'm not sure what else would be in there that would use that same amount of water. And therefore,
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
if I could just jump in for a moment,
Sure.
just to follow up on what the mayor said. I mean, if all things being equal here, if Coca-Cola were to remain, we would likely be having a conversation that's talking about the hyperinflationary economic environment in which we are operating. So it just is important to sort of keep in perspective that you know, though this is an increase, this is a level funded budget. And this is severely sort of limiting our ability to kind of move forward in the way that it would be typically recommended a utility move forward, meaning that we are not seeing a rate increase so we can invest within the utility. We're just trying to stabilize a terrible situation here. And I think that we all need to not lose sight of that. This is a very difficult situation. We are trying to stabilize our operations. That's what this rate increase does. It does not allow us further investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I see Marie Brown has their hand up.
Yes, hello.
Marie, yeah. Hi.
Hi, hi. Ooh, sorry. I'm trying to turn my video on. There we go.
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah.
I am just curious because I'll bring a different perspective in terms of I understand, one, I'm so in the space right now of pausing to recognize the importance of incredible skill that comes from things that are often under recognized. So I stand by recognizing the importance of the water utility and all of the expertise that are going into that. I will point out, I'm coming from Northampton in the Ward 3 neighborhood that has been massively impacted by the fact that Coca-Cola has not been paying for its impact on the community that it's been abusing with its trucks going through for years. So I'm in probably a small pool of people that's actually celebrating their exit because of the cost to my house, the foundation, the cracks everywhere, the constant air quality and the safety of my streets that have not been managed by the city or the state. Because actually my street, because of this, is being treated like it's a state highway, but it's not. So there's ways in which I just bring to this conversation a question of the impact we've been paying for and have not been acknowledged or compensated for, and what that means in the long term for either the change of where costs go. I'm more just making an observation and a point that I'm not sure is a question, but I'm curious to, yeah, maybe other people have insights on that. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Marie. Would anyone like to comment on that?
I'm just grateful for that perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I'm just looking for other hands, either virtual or if you can't raise your virtual hand, you can try to wave to us. Let me just do a scan before I move on. Okay. Okay. So counselors, oh, is that Joanne back? Joanne, let me see if we can, oh, good. I think I am, yeah.
I'm back. I'm back.
Great, awesome.
Mine is I actually would like to reiterate with just the last person that spoke. I live in Ward 3, and the people on Lincoln Avenue have been dealing with this issue for many, many years. And there's, that's a lot of issues with that. And if we did get another company, a huge company in there, that would that change with the traffic that would go through the neighborhood? That's one point. I actually raised my hand right in the very beginning, and it was actually kind of trivial in perspective of what we've been talking about. It's like, who's been doing those slideshows, because they're very good. And do they work for the city?
Thank you, Joanne. Yes, I appreciate a good slideshow. It was a very excellent presentation.
Yes, and Scalia she did a really great presentation as well.
I couldn't agree more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you, Joanne, for sharing that perspective. I mean, I will reiterate that I feel like the city has been remarkably accommodating to Coca-Cola, and it's deeply disappointing how they are leaving us in this way. After all that we have done as a community to support them for these 65-ish years.
Yes. And I actually, my husband and I live right in back of them. And, we've been dealing with a lot of the huge trucks that go by, and not only just go by, but just like, just keep their trucks going. And the Bill, my husband, is sitting right here. He's with, what do they call that? The Jake brakes. And it's right here in the back. There's no reason for them to be using Jake brakes. None. There's not a hill. There's not an incline. And so it was kind of curious to me as to why Coke, of all companies, couldn't recognize and give that information to people of other companies. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you, Joanne.
All right, thank you.
A lot. I learned a new term. Okay. Yeah, I'm just checking for hands. I really appreciate, yeah, I don't see any. I've really appreciated these thoughtful comments from our always thoughtful residents. And so counselors,
Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say, we can ask questions, and then I was thinking how it would go. We could ask questions, and then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing, and then we can deliberate on the order that. So why don't, yeah, so anyway, go ahead, Vice Chair Labarge.
You're saying we can ask Donna questions right now?
That's what I was thinking, is that we could ask questions, but then we could deliberate later. Yeah.
All right, my question is about what is on this order for tonight. I want an explanation, so I want to talk with Donna about that. Okay, Donna, if you look at the order for tonight, on the water and sewer rates for 2024. And I've gotten some calls about it, and also concerns in my family about it. Very hard to understand this order versus the packet that we have seen tonight. I mean, we have the packet, went through it, and even my husband has found it very difficult to understand. And he's here with me right now, and he wants to hear from you. On the 24, the raise on the quarterly base rate. On it, it says $47.45. Can you explain that? And we heard just a little while ago, $10, correct? $10
Yeah.
a month.
Yes, it might be helpful maybe to put the order up on the screen.
Right.
I think so, yes.
Okay. Laura, are you able to do that? I guess.
If someone's able to do that.
If you can't, Laura, I can.
It's possible. My work computer died and I'm using my home.
Oh, okay. Let me try. Let me see.
Yeah, because the
hold
concerns
on.
are the comparison going on here for the year of 23 and 24.
Yep, so I just want to make sure we're talking about the
Yeah.
same timeframes. You know, we can talk about cost impacts in a month, we can talk about them in a quarter, we can talk about them in a year. So I just want to make sure, and we've actually talked about them in all of those ways tonight. So I just want to be sure that we're all talking about the same thing.
Right. Thank you, Donna.
Before I answer the question. So my
Okay,
slides.
What
Yeah.
I'm asking for is by the quarter.
Right. And I believe that that's how the order is drafted.
Okay, this is how, they can't show it?
Well, so you want to see the order, not the slide presentation. Is
The
that what we're
order
saying?
that's
Okay.
coming in tonight.
Yeah,
Because
let me
there's
see if
some
I can share mine.
confusion with
Okay,
it.
hold on. Yeah, hold on a sec. Oh,
There we
thank
go.
you.
Thank you.
Charlene, she's the expert sharer. I'm just, there we go. Thank you for that, Director Nardi.
Yes, thank you, Shardine. If you see, Donna, where it states the quarterly base rate charge for the year 2024. On it versus 23, which was 1529. And then for the year 24, which is 47.45. That is a significant increase here. If you look at that, you are looking at almost about 300%. Something's not right here versus what's stated in the booklet versus this. A 5/8 inch, okay, let's say 23 at $15.29. And for the year of 24, $47.45 quarterly.
Yes, Counselor. So the way this order is drafted is it's drafted showing you the difference between quarterly charges. So in FY '23, the reason it's written like this is because we bill quarterly. So most residences and businesses get a bill every quarter
We don't have.
of the year. Okay. So in FY '23, when you saw a quarterly base charge for water on your bill, it equaled $15.29. So every time that you get billed in that year, every quarter that you get billed in the year, you saw $15.29. You are correct in that it is a significant increase for FY '24. It's actually 210%, about 210%. And it is now $47.45 every quarter. So instead of $15.29, it's $47.45 every quarter. In my slideshow presentation, I talked about an annual impact. I talked about what that equals if you were to divide it by 12 and think about like, okay, what is this by the month? But the way the order is written, this is a quarterly charge because that's how households are billed, is quarterly.
So then this is correct. You're looking at an increase about 300%.
Yes, it's about 210% in the quarterly base charge. The usage rates are staying identical. Those are not changing. The only thing that's changing is the quarterly base charge. So mathematically, the difference between the numbers in the FY '23 column and the numbers in the FY '24 column is, as we just discussed.
Right, because that a lot of people called me about that. And they were correct. You're looking at almost a 300% increase on that. Right? Just about the way it is. About 210. So anyways, I went to my husband and I said, Rich, I need help on this. Am I going crazy or not? He said, you're absolutely correct. He said it's about 210 increase on that. So a lot of people were concerned about that, looking at those figures, Donna, of a huge increase, and their bill was going to be that 210%.
Yes,
So this-
understood. Sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, no, so this is exactly the same information that's in the presentation that you saw the other night and saw again tonight. We're very upfront about this. This is, I think we've said all the different ways, every possible way we can describe the devastating impact of Coke leaving Northampton. It is a quarter of our water and sewer enterprise. And we have to make up that revenue. There's because it is a closed enterprise system. We fully agree with you. Coke is leaving us in a horrible situation.
Thank you, Mayor.
So thank you for sharing
Thank you.
the order. Yeah. Counselors. Yes, Counselor Nash.
Thank you, Rachel. It looks like the chat is going.
I know.
I am not monitoring that. I
In-
probably,
in-
I should have announced that we don't use the chat except for technical problems.
I just tried to disable it and hopefully I was successful.
Those people who, if
No
they have
offense to the
questions-
folks who are
Right.
posting in
and
the
they-
chat, but It's,
Can they raise their hand?
it's
or-
an issue, you're more than welcome to share your thoughts in comment. Due to open meeting law, we can't accept chat.
Right. So if anyone in the chat would like to raise their hand, I left the chat on because sometimes we have technical difficulties, but I should have clarified what we use it for. I see Marie again. Unmute you. Thank you for being on that.
No worries.
There we go. Yes,
Thank
Marie.
you. Sorry, yes, that's helpful to know that that's a custom we're not using in this context. Yeah, no, I just wanted to essentially come back to the comment that kind of mean by this question of being in the neighborhood that's been impacted for decades by Coca-Cola. I think there's ways in which I'm sure a controversial statement I'm going to make, and that's what this is all about. We hash through things. Coca-Cola has been perhaps funding one public work in its massive use of water. It's been a hog of water in a way that we have like a neighbor that just has the tap on. And that's been good in that, like, during the 65 years that it's been here, it's used a lot of water, and that has built a very robust and certain scaled water team and enterprise, as it's called. It's built in response to the scale of what it's been dealing with. And there's a way in which the truth is that's been improperly imbalanced, in that public work they've been paying for, but they have not been paying, as you've now heard me and another person mention, they've not been paying for their impact to the roads, to the communities, to the foundations, to the safety, to the air quality. They've been, like so many other things, a resource that is paying in one and not in another. And so we've been paying in other ways for having this kind of bully corporate neighbor. They've had the means, it's Coca-Cola, come on now, but they also have the means to be like, la, la, la. So they haven't paid. So there's ways in which it is a tragedy for all of us to have to deal with this bully who's been mooching off of a system, paying one, not paying another. It's a bad lover. So, like, good riddance. Thank goodness they're going away, but there's going to be costs we all have to pay for it. There's a part of me that's just wondering, is it that we actually need to look at in the long term? We've been using a lot more water as a community because we've had a giant sucking water purpose over in a corner that's not been helping otherwise. And maybe not disincentivizing not using water, that feels nervous. In an environmental standpoint, I'm like, whoa, wait, hang on. We actually don't want to use too much water. We don't necessarily need to be having a system that's bloated to the system that Coke has made us. And as a community, we don't want to look that much higher on costs as our neighbors, because that will disincentivize other businesses coming in that are healthy and good community members, other people that just want to stay and live here. There's all kinds of reasons why that is a terrifying thing to try to supplement. We cannot replace Coke. We are not Coke, and we're glad that we're not Coke. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Yeah, I'm glad you re-raised your hand or found a way to comment. Yes, Councilor Nash.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Maori. So I have a question for, I guess it's for Donna. It's for page 30 of the presentation. And it has to do with those bar graphs.
Yes.
And I think I want to understand it a little better. And maybe if Director Nardi could pull that page back up again.
Thank you, Director.
Yes, there it is. So the first few times I've looked at this, I wasn't reading it right. So so if I'm looking at water rates, I'm seeing that blue bar and it goes up to roughly $400. And but then there's what looks like a teal green bar that goes up to, it looks like around $530. And that, if I'm understanding that right, that is because of the income exemption, that is what's pushing that bar on both sides higher. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, so the line on top, the dark blue line surrounded by yellow is the 2024 total average annual cost for a residential user. And then the bar on the bottom is 2023. And
Okay.
so what what those are showing is, let's just remove the income exemption discount for right now. Pretend that's not even there. So,
Okay,
so the lighter colored bar is, the average cost for combined, that would be the combined quarterly base charge and your usage fee together in 2023. And then again, the yellow surrounded line is for 2024. So now if we were to say that you were eligible for an income exemption discount, that red bar goes in and you do not pay the quarterly base charges. You wouldn't pay them in 2023, you wouldn't pay them in 2024. 2024's rates are higher because the quarterly base charges are going up. But what that red line is showing is that your year over year is not going to move. So if you have the income exemption, your average annual cost stays completely static 2023 to 2024. In 2023, you're not paying those quarterly base charges, which is why, that bar is sort of sitting between $300 and $400. You're getting an exemption in 2023, you get the same exemption in 2024. Does that make sense?
I think I'm getting it now. Okay, and so that for the, so for exemptions, all right, so if somebody, I'm trying to think of ways to, all right. So the exemptions are for available to seniors and folks who are lower income. And that, that essentially if they qualify for these exemptions, they're not paying any of the meter rates. So the impact of this proposed increase that is, it's not affecting folks who qualify for the exemptions.
That's correct. Folks who qualify for the exemptions pay usage only. It's FY23, they're already paying usage only. So if you look back again at this chart on the left-hand side, if you just pretended that 2024 line wasn't even there, they're already getting an exemption for the quarterly base charge. They're not paying that $15.29, I think it is, current quarterly base charge. They're already not paying that. When that base charge goes up in 2024, they also will not be paying that because they get an income exemption. So they're paying only on their average usage. So there is no change unless their usage, goes up or changes. There is no change in their bill year over year.
So thank you, Donna. And so I sent you these numbers earlier yesterday and you confirmed them, and you could just reconfirm my math is good again, because that's always good to hear. But that the increase for the 5/8 meters is $244.04. I know you rounded up, I think, in the in one of the slides. And then for the 3/4 inch, it's $337.44. And one of the things I appreciate about this increase being on the meter rate is really clear what people are going to see for increases. It's not kind of, the per the 100, the CCFs, it's seeing that rate go up, that actually confuses me because my water rate goes up and down. Whereas in this case, it's very clear that annually that, that if I have a 5/8 inch pipe or meter like I do, that $244.04, and then some folks have this 3/4 size meter that'll be $337.44. These are significant increases, but that's what we're talking about. That's there. All of the graphs and charts aside, that's what the average homeowner is going to be concerned about. Yeah, Donna, we also had a discussion earlier about meters and households and buildings, and that that most residences in Northampton have these 5/8 meters. So, and that would include like a 2-family or a 3-family maybe as well, or at what point is there kind of a jump between a 1-family and then what is it, a 4-family? When do we make that jump to the 3/4 meter?
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, Counselor, we were talking about the combined increases for both water and sewer. So when we were talking about the $244, that's actually combined.
Yes, thank you. Those are combined increases.
Yeah, I just want to be clear about that. So yes, we did have a conversation earlier about kind of what meter sizes, are common in the city and sort of what apartments have what and how are large apartment buildings metered. Typically what we have through the city is we have one building, 1 meter. That's typically how it works. Now, there's always exceptions to every rule or reasons that we would do things differently. But 1 parcel, 1 meter. That's generally how it goes. If we have, let's say, a 3-family house that's condoized, each one of those condos is a parcel, so each one would have its own meter. The housing authority, they have like multiple buildings. Each building has its own meter. So, we talked about sort of various buildings in the city, like buildings on Main Street or buildings on Main Street downtown. There's a large apartment building in Leeds at the corner of Main Street and Mulberry Street. So again, most of those buildings have 1 meter. It is size based on kind of occupancy, type of occupancy, and what the engineers who sort of designed the system for that, the internal plumbing within that building, told Public Works that they would need for flow rates. So as I mentioned in my presentation, a typical house with a 5/8 meter can flow 25 gallons a minute. But 25 gallons a minute is not going to be sufficient if you have 3 families and a swimming pool and irrigation, and you're trying to wash your car, and maybe someone's running a business on one of the floors, and they're cooking or making food or something. So you would need a larger size meter. So 25 gallons a minute is, a 5/8 meter sort of typical household, and it does go up from there. A 1-inch meter will flow 55 gallons a minute. So you would see a 1-inch meter in maybe like a small grocery store, a pizza restaurant, some sort of a restaurant. You would see larger meters in some of the larger buildings on Main Street that have, multiple tenants or sort of mixed use occupancy. And then once you get up into, a 2-inch or a 3-inch meter, you're talking about manufacturing or like heating plants, or sort of some significant heavy water usage. So really anything an inch and up, you're talking about a commercial establishment.
Thank you. But typically everybody's going to be, I'm emphasizing this because I don't sense any businesses that are here in the room to speak to this. That it's mostly residents. And so we'd be looking at the 5/8 and the 3/4 and the 244 increase and the 337 increase. And I just wanted to underline that.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the overall increases, Councillor Labarge, for water and sewer combined, annualized.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks for asking that question, because
confusing.
It can be confusing, and I think the director gave a very straightforward presentation, and I hope I'm not gooping it up here. So I think I've asked my questions here. I've covered the income exemption discount. And just to review how people do that, they get a hold of, they call the assessor's office or contact the assessor's office, and they will help out residents with that application.
Yes.
That's correct?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
No, you go ahead, Donna.
I was just going to say it's that program is administered through the assessor's office. Go ahead, Mark. I hear you chiming in.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, ours is an 8:30. We have application ready. We can print it online, but we just need that in the assessor's office. We'll mail it to the homeowner. Sometimes I've even brought them to the homeowner. 22 income fiscal year or billing year.
We're not getting everything that you're saying, Mark. Could
Yeah.
you, the deadline, could you try and one more time? What, or did you say May 31st?
No, April 1st was that, or actually today was the deadline for fiscal 23. Today it was.
What?
Did you say fiscal
And
23?
2023, yeah.
Okay, for the current fiscal year.
Deadline was today.
The line was today
Yes.
for the
We
current
started
fiscal year.
taking the fiscal 24. We started taking applications for fiscal 24 today.
Excellent.
That one got through.
Thank you.
So they started taking them today, and that will go until next April 1st.
You can take them anytime in the fiscal year, is that right? Well, anytime until next April?
Yes. Is anything I'm saying getting through?
Some.
Yes. It's like talking to a shy AI robot or something. But yes, I think.
I'm barely getting anything y'all are saying as well. So.
Charlene, do you know any of these dates by any chance?
April 1st, April 1st, 2024 is the deadline for fiscal 24.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So July.
Counselors, do you have any other clarifying questions about that?
What was the date on that? July what?
April 1st was, this is what I'm incorrect.
April 1st, 2024. Is
2024.
Is the deadline for fiscal year 24.
So,
right, so people can start sending applications now, and then they have to have them all in by April 1st, 2024 next year.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Teamwork.
Yes. And I just want to remind the public that we're talking about the water sewer rates and not stormwater. And yes, Councilor Moulton, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to follow up on a couple of points that have been recently made. One, just now by Councilor Nash, every enterprise in the city, every resident business, commercial enterprise, industrial, hospital, so forth, will be bearing the cost of this water and sewer rate increase. And I haven't done all the calculations on the increase in the water quarterly base rate charges, but it looks to me like it is a 210% increase across the board for all. Is that correct, Director?
It is, yes.
Thank you. And the difference being that, of course, we haven't heard that there's any relief for commercial businesses or industries or anyone other than residential homeowners. Could we go back to that slide that we had up for Councilor Nash?
Director Nardi. perhaps has that slide. Thank you.
Yes, that is the one. It Council Director Liscaya, it looks to me like with the income exemption discount on the water side, it's actually going to fall somewhat below the FY23 rate. It lines up perfectly on the sewer side, but it looks to me like it's going to be a bit lower.
Right, that's correct, Counselor. And the reason for that is there is currently no quarterly base charge in sewer.
Right.
Because there is no quarterly base charge in sewer, that's like perfectly symmetrical. On the water side, you've already got a quarterly base charge that the folks who get this income exemption discount, it's being waived for them. So that's why you've already kind of got that low income exemption discount bar in there now on 2023. And again, 2024, the rates are increasing. So you're sort of seeing that reflected in the 2024 bar moving to the right, but that red line stays completely static because there is no change.
Right. So for those residential users who have taken advantage of that exemption program, their rate has been a bit lower, and it will continue to fall on that red line. And perhaps because of this rather steep increase, there will be more people who will become aware of this exemption program and will take advantage of it starting in FY24. The other thing I wanted to ask Director Liscaya, if you could just speak for a minute to the suggestion that at some point, would it be feasible for the city to scale back its water and sewer departments and enterprises with the departure of Coca-Cola? Or is there no direct correlation between a large, extremely large consumer like Coca-Cola and a reduction in the future in water and sewer?
It's a good question, Counselor. Our system is quite extensive and our infrastructure is built out irrespective of a large user like Coca-Cola. So, when I talk about sort of the fixed expenses that we have, when I talk about the city's ability to serve, we have the ability to serve, we have the infrastructure in place to support an industry like Coca-Cola, to support an industry bigger than Coca-Cola, or to support no industry like Coca-Cola. Scaling our operation is not possible. We have 3 surface water reservoirs, we have wells, we have a water treatment plant, we have miles of distribution. A lot of people do contemplate that maybe, well, you could take, a certain section of the system offline, or you could, close down this pump station, and that's just not possible. The system is quite diffuse. It's extensive. It touches every corner of the city. We're not able to decommission portions of it or sections of it. We may see a very limited reduction in the usage or sort of in some of our treatment processes, maybe in the usage of some electricity. It's unclear to us to what extent we're going to see that. We don't know until we know. Coca-Cola has always been with us. So it's difficult to sort of gauge what that drop is going to do. But I think the charts over the past 7 years that show our budget show that we have scaled down even with Coca-Cola here. We run a very, very, very tight financial ship, and that has been reflected in the rates over the past 7 years. So I hope that answers your question, but there is not a lot of opportunity for further scaling, except to the extent that some minor operational costs may be you know, may fall, and we'll see what those look like as it happens.
Thank you. That's helpful.
And they would be on like a minuscule scale as compared to the revenue that's being lost by Coca-Cola. Believe me, we've asked the same questions and looked.
Counselor Moulton, do you have any other follow-up questions on that?
No, thank you.
Okay, I did see Gwen's hand up, but I don't see her anymore. So Gwen, if you wanted to ask a question, you can raise your hand again. I see Councilor Labarge has a question. Yes.
Thank you very much. Mayor, could you have Alan Wolf also send me that information that he presented tonight? That apparently he has checked it out, or you're working on it through community action? Because I have had some residents, Mayor, that have called me in regards, not just Ward 6 and other wards, in regards with the exemption. They're over like $1,000 or $2,000, and they can't get it at all in the city now. So that's why I'd like to have that information and try to help out as many residents that I can with that.
Sure, we will send, we'll send out what we're looking into and everything that we find out about it. Again, that is for renters. What Alan was
Just for
talking
rental.
about. What Alan was talking about is
But I could use that too.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, so that was an additional thing that we were trying to understand that could potentially help renters.
Thank you so much. Also, Donna, I have two questions for you. Say with condos, say there's like 44 condos in one big area up in, say, in the Leeds area. All right. How do they go? Do they have a meter in every one of those condos?
So every scenario has the potential to be different, but generally condominiums are considered to be their own parcel, and each parcel has its own meter. So one owner, one meter. That's generally how it goes. Again, there are always sort of exceptions for various reasons, but that's typically how it goes. If it is apartments, like if we're talking about like the River Run condominiums on Damon Road is a good example to use. There's one meter there, and it is billed to the association. And the city has no involvement beyond the one bill that we generate that goes to the association at River Run. So, you know, things can be set up a little bit differently, but again, generally condominiums, one owner, one meter, one bill, and apartment houses are a little bit of a different scenario with a single meter going to the owner of record.
Okay, because I haven't talked with my family up there yet, up in Leeds. I have 3 families living in the condos up there in Leeds. And they did say to me, oh boy, here we go with the association. So maybe that's what you're talking about, instead of each one having a meter, or I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, when we send bills to the owners of record and they have, you know, other folks who they are, you know, renting to, or they have some sort of financial arrangement with, that's not something that the city gets involved in. So, you know, we bill per meter, and whoever's name is on that parcel, that's who we send the bill to. So whatever financial arrangement exists between them, that's not something that the city involves itself in.
Okay, question one more time. How many wells do we have in the city of Northampton residential?
That's a great
Good
question,
question.
Counselor. And wells are
'Cause
actually
I
not
got
under.
calls on that.
Wells are actually not under the jurisdiction of Public Works. They fall under the jurisdiction of the Health Department. So
Of the what?
of the Health Department.
Oh,
So I do not know the exact count of wells within the city, except to say that there are plenty of folks within the city who have water service but not sewer service, and also sewer service but not water service, and that depends on our available infrastructure.
Wow. Thank you so much, Donna.
Yeah, Director, I was going to ask a similar question, perhaps because of Ward 6 and 7 being kind of on the outskirts there, about what percentage of folks were on water and sewer service versus, I assume the overwhelming majority of our residents utilize our water and sewer services.
That's correct. The overwhelming majority do. Like I said, we have about 9,500 water connections within the city, and a very closely followed by sewer connections. So again, because both wells and septic are not under the jurisdiction of the DPW, I don't have updated data on that. But there are certainly a percentage of households, particularly in Ward 6 and Ward 7, who do have wells and septic systems not under our jurisdiction.
No, that's
Got it.
under the Board of Health. And it's
Yes.
very costly once they go.
Yes. So I'm going to take the opportunity to just ask two questions. One, a resident asked me, which is why Coca-Cola was leaving. And I realized I didn't really,
Uh-huh.
they might not have given a reason, but I thought we should cover that one.
Do you want me to take that, or you want to give me the second question too first as well?
Well, the second question was my own, which is if Coca-Cola does stay on, where does that kind of money go? We kind of touched upon that, but if they say they stay on for 6 months, extra months or whatever, where would that kind of money that we've not accounted for go? So those are the two questions I had.
Okay, I'll field the first one and then I'll
Okay.
punt the second one. So what they have, we know that when they made this announcement in August of 21, they were announcing a corporate restructuring of how they do bottling. So now I can't recall the total number of plants that it affected, but let's say 12. 10 they outsourced to a bottler who was going to do their bottling for them, and only 2 they were closing. Ours and one in California. Why they've chosen to close the Massachusetts and the California ones, we don't totally know. But there may be a particular reason why those 2 were chosen as opposed to outsourcing them to another operator but keeping the plants in those communities. But that is what we know.
Blue states is the only thing I can think. I won't get paranoid. Anyway,
There's a question about environmental, the stringency of environmental regulations and in Massachusetts and California versus other locations. I don't, they've not said anything about it. So we don't know. But this is, part of a big, as I said, restructuring plan. It's unfortunate that we are one of the sort of casualties of it. And then you're welcome. Charlene or Donna, could you answer the second question?
Yeah, so my question was basically, will the money go into the general fund, or will it just go into the question about if Coca-Cola stays on, kind of lingers a few months, what happens to that revenue?
Right. So the water enterprise is a closed financial system. So any money collected by the water enterprise or the store enterprise stays within those enterprises. So every year, we set revenue expectations and we have expenses. And on June 30th, the year closes. And we sort of do our year-end bookkeeping. And if there is a surplus at that time, meaning if we brought in more revenue than money we spent, that money belongs to the enterprise. It stays within the enterprise and it becomes part of retained earnings within the enterprise, which then can come back before the council and be voted for various projects, or it can be sent to stabilization for future use. So it always stays within the enterprise. You may recall that right before the holidays, we came before council with a series of orders to appropriate some money from retained earnings in both water and sewer to some of the projects that I talked about tonight. We actually funded some of our sort of ongoing capital needs and some of our larger capital expenses with the retained earnings or the excess revenue from the prior year's budget. So if Coca-Cola were to not leave the city, when they said it were to stay on for several more months or however long, we would accumulate that revenue as sort of revenue that we had not budgeted for, but it would stay within the enterprise. And then we would be back before council asking for some movement of that money, depending on what our needs are, whether it's to do something with the budget next year, to supplement capital projects, to pay for some unanticipated emergency, or to transfer it to stabilization for some sort of future use.
Right. Okay, that's right. It seems like really formidable to work with a closed system like that.
Yeah.
It's not how we do it, I'm wrapping my head around it, but it's no joke because you can't really bring anything in. So anyway, that answers a lot of my questions. I had a lot of questions, and our residents asked a lot of them, and so I don't have any further questions myself. I want to look around to see if any of the other counselors have one before we entertain a motion to close the hearing. And please let me know if you see any. Okay, so in that case, I would thank our city staff, and I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing so that we could then go on to the agenda item of actually deliberating over the order. Zach.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second it.
Roll call, Laura. You just
Councilor Maori,
yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, so we've closed the public hearing. And so we're not going to field questions now. The counselors are now going to move on to the order itself to deliberate and out a recommendation to full council, where the order will be voted on at our next council meeting. Councilor Labarge.
Yes. Could we have a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. Yes. Okay.
We've already had a meeting.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I didn't even notice how. Yeah. Yes. So 8:30. So let's say 8:45.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. item, the actual item that was referred to the committee that we saw earlier, 23.289, in order to establish water and sewer rates for FY 2024, referred by City Council on 3/30/2023. Are we recording? Yeah, we are recording. I just want to make sure. Okay, good. And we looked at the document. I mean, I'm gonna just do any counselors need that pulled up, or you have it, or I have it, but
I got it.
okay, good.
I'm good.
Okay. Okay, counselors, I guess if this is our time to have some discussion. Yeah. Yes, yes, Counselor Nash.
Well, for the sake of discussion, and I'd like to make a motion to send this item forward to council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
And I'd like to say a few words about why I'm making that recommendation. So first of all, that the departure of Coca-Cola as a customer within our closed system it's a significant hit. That to lose 25% of the revenue, you need to make a 33% increase across the rest of the customer base. As with percentages, it always doesn't come out precise, but the way that's coming out is a 210% increase.
Right.
Has been recommended for the metered fees. And I'm thinking that I appreciate, as I said earlier, that the metered fees are very straightforward, and that I've been referring to annualized numbers here. People, we can say to constituents, to residents across the city, this is what the rate is going to be. Look at your meter. Here's how much more you're going to have to pay. It's not tied in with usage fees where it kind of like, well, how much did I use? I have to look at the bill. I have to calculate. What if I use less? If I use less, how do I get it down to, my bill from last year? By taking this approach, it's really very straightforward for everybody who gets a water bill. This is what your increase is going to look like. I also want to acknowledge that, that I've gotten several emails today and phone calls from folks who are really concerned about this increase. That this is not we are in inflationary times, and that we are daily getting hit with increases that we just didn't see coming, whether it's a gas bill, an electric bill, at the gas pump, or at the grocery store. That things are the world economy is in flux, and prices are going up everywhere. And that and I just want to acknowledge that this is one of those places where people can actually go to and complain about or voice their concerns about an increase that's hitting them. There's no forum to go complain about electric bills. There's no forum to go and talk about the price of chicken or whatever else. But here we have a vital resource for folks who live in the city, and this is a big increase. 210% is a big number. But at the same time, I think that this is what we need to do to support what I'll call our water. It's our water utility. It's our water business. We own this. We are the owners. It's kind of like a cooperative that, you know, that we own the business here, and that we've had a change in the customer base, and that we need to make this adjustment for the health of this terrific water system. I mean, we have wonderful water. It's dependable, it's clean, and as Director LaScalia went through earlier, that we have folks who are super dedicated and on the job 7 days a week, 24/7, to make sure that whatever comes out of the tap is really high quality water. And for the health of, I mean, it's just a bottom line public health need that's being addressed here. And two more thoughts. Well, actually, I want to share my analogy I had with Director LaScalia earlier about a pizza shop. We were talking before lunch, so we were getting hungry. But, you know, if you're making less pizzas, that, you know, less pizzas are going out the door, you still need to keep the shop going. And that's the situation we're in here. Less water is going out through the system, but you still need to keep the system up and going and providing quality water. I really appreciate the fact that by doing it through the meter rates, that we have the ability to offer such a wide range of exemptions, not only for seniors, but for folks with lower incomes. And that's being figured into this. And I think that, you know, for our community, that, you know, having the ability to help out, you know, we're looking at this increase, but we're also looking at a way so we can help carry the load for the folks who it's a greater difficulty to carry. And then the last thing, and I want to acknowledge this, the question was in the chat. It was related to, you know, how is this going to help attract a replacement business to Northampton? And I want to say that I think that by taking this approach with the meter rates, if somebody's looking to move into, they're, you know, like right now saying, oh, Coca-Cola is moving, I want to move in there. If we're raising the usage rates, they're not they're walking away right now. But if we're doing this by raising the meter rates, that we're really committed to keeping our usage rates low, that's a much better sell in terms of getting somebody to want to move into that facility out there on Industrial Drive. So, and I'm going to skip all the stuff around truck noises, but and trucks. But I do want to say this is not how I wanted to fix the truck problem in Ward 3. But it will have that impact. Coca-Cola has been the source of the truck traffic that's been all over Ward 3 neighborhood streets, and more to come on that. But I'm ending my deliberation, my thoughts there. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Labarge.
Thank you. I'll make it very quick. This has not been an easy one here. And I want to thank Donna LaScalia for the great 2 presentations now. And also with the comparison of people being very concerned about the 23 versus the 24, which was a huge increase of 210%. That's huge. I think the big problem is, like many people were telling me, they felt like they were being punished because Coca-Cola Company was leaving. So the interest rates, I mean, the percentage rates were going up. That's how they were feeling. But I also have many people who have said, due to the COVID-19, A lot of business struggled. We lost businesses. A lot of homes went up for sale. People got out of here, out of the city. Plus, the fact is, it was very hard for people with families, food on the table. The prices now are still elevated, And people are getting their jobs back. It's not happening overnight. It's taking them time to find jobs. I have talked with many, many people throughout the city, and they want to know what is happening here, that everything is going up. And I did explain to them about Coca-Cola. I sent the drafting to them down the line, many people in many wards. And I had great concerns. And I have friends that own 60 apartments here in this city. And what's going to happen here? Possibly the rents will go up. Are they going to be able to stay in Northampton? I don't know. Thank goodness that we found out tonight that there's an apartment place for people to go through community action, through a grant or whatever it is. That makes me feel better about that. But I also have seniors who are over the threshold, and I'm very, very concerned about that. Very concerned about that. It's not easy for me to say yes at all. I am looking at what I hear from people throughout this city, knowing a lot of people. And they're really upset about constantly hearing of things going up, period. Food, they have to pay for their insurances, car insurance, house insurance, their children, transportation, their vehicles, food, right down the line. It's nonstop within the past year of things keep raising and raising. So I have no choice as a counselor. I will agree to move this on to city council with a positive recommendation. But I also am hoping that we get many more people to call, because there's concerns out there. And some people feel it's not even worth talking to counselors anymore. It's like deaf ears. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Moulton.
Thank you. And thanks to both of you for your thoughtful remarks. And Counselor Nash, if there's a silver lining to all of this, I appreciate the fact that the truck problem will be taken care of in Ward 3. There's no doubt that this comes at a difficult time for many of our constituents with the inflationary pressures that certainly all of us are dealing with. And I've heard from constituents about this being added to all the increases for what they're paying for necessities. The fact is, though, that we are currently the public officials who have to deal with the departure of Coca-Cola and its impact on the city, or as the mayor points out, the fizz has finally gone flat, and now we've got to react to that. We've heard the mayor and her team talk about the efforts that are being made to find replacement businesses to use that plant, and I hope that that there are some who do move in, and so that we can recover some of those 300 jobs lost. And I hope that they're environmentally friendly businesses, and I hope that they're neighborhood friendly businesses. The fact is, it's very unlikely that they're going to make up for the revenue loss for our water and sewer enterprises that Coca-Cola is leaving with their with what has been the 25% or so their contribution to that revenue. So what we're faced with is how to make up that difference. And I think it's important for the public, for our constituents to understand that the water and sewer enterprise funds are not, they are closed, and there are no property taxes that go into those funds. It's user supported. And I think one of the one of the facts that is making this sticker shock seem worse is that because of prudent financial management over the last several years, the rates have not increased in 4 of the last 6 years, including the last 3 years. So perhaps residents have been lulled into a sense that, we're humming along and we haven't had to see an increase in those rates. And as we heard the Director LaScalia say, that's because of prudent budgeting. Expenses are still going up and rising. And there is not a direct correlation between the fact that we're losing an industry that has used so much water and the ability of the city to scale back its operations. We are responsible for utility that our residents depend on, and our businesses and everyone in the city depends on the water flowing and the sewage getting treated. And we have to pay for that. We've heard about the millions of dollars that are going into infrastructure improvements at the reservoirs, at the wastewater treatment plant. And by the way, I do want to say that it's forward thinking to replace old water mains under Main Street and on Mountain Street during previously planned reconstructions of those streets instead of doing it at a separate time. That is going to be financially that's going to it's financially responsible, and will also it prevents the aggravation of having a street reconstructed, then a few years later repairing the water main. So those are good decisions that have been made. The quarterly, the base rate is the way to go, I believe, primarily because it allows for the exemptions that are available specifically for homeowners who meet income eligibility. And I'm also very happy to hear tonight from Chief of Staff Wolf that the mayor and her staff responded to what several councilors voiced last Thursday about a concern that relief for renters be explored, and that is great news. What's going to be required, I believe, is education. We need to educate our constituents, residents of the city, about the availability of these exemption programs over the next coming months. So for all those reasons, I mean, I don't sit here and relish this vote. This is not an easy vote to take, but I too will support this going forward with a positive recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. You've all covered a lot of my thoughts. I'll just say a few things, which is, yeah, these are hard financial times, and unfortunately, municipalities are not exempt from the rising costs, just like residents aren't. And so this is a lot, this is a bitter pill to swallow in that way. And I really appreciate the comments we got tonight from from the residents and our public, because I'm deeply reflecting on, all the facets of, what it's a market economy, and that and moving forward, maybe these are things we can kind of think about and reflect on, things like impact. And basically what happened was Coca-Cola was subsidizing our water and sewer, and we kind of formed around them, and then and then they leave, and then we're left in this kind of lurch. And I actually and we talked when the cannabis industry came out, we talked a lot about impact and impact fees, and it's interesting to hear with these big operations that there's impacts to the community, both positive and negative, and some fleetingly positive. 65 years is a long time, so maybe not that fleeting, but yeah, I think this is the nature of a market economy, and we need to go in with eyes wide open when we think about other bigger other replacements, possible replacements for Coca-Cola. I think we really need to look at all the impacts and the benefits that might occur from that. So, but I'm satisfied. I mean, mainly, what I'm feeling is that I'm satisfied that, Mayor Shower and the director and the mayor's office have really thought this burden through and have worked, to their ultimate capacity to, within the limitations of the state, guidelines, to do what they can to mitigate the impact on our residents. So I think there's really not, the base charge was thoughtful. Using the base charge because of it's the only avenue to the exemptions. And so as Councilor Moulton says, this is going to take some explaining as to why some of these choices were made. And really good point, Councilor Nash, about the base charge versus the usage rates in terms of our ability to attract, future businesses. That was a good point. So I think that we've done all we can. And much thought has been put, and really I felt like the city government has done this as soon as the economy started turning and people started really feeling the pinch. I think the mayor's office was always thinking about residents in terms of that pinch, and I think this is what they came up with, and it's not ideal, and this is level funding that we are breaking even with this change. So there's really, I don't see that choice because we are breaking even. I will support a positive recommendation, but I think all of us agree, including the mayor and the DPW director, that, that there's nothing particularly positive about this added burden. It's not ideal, but this is what we can do. And so I will support.
And that's what I just said.
Yeah. So we do have a motion on the floor, and if anyone doesn't, if any counselors have any more to say, please do. But if not, we can go back to that motion. Okay, so Laura, the motion on the floor was to positively recommend 23.289 in order to establish water and sewer rates for FY 2024. To full council. So we can do a roll call on that one.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Okay. So that passes, and we'll go on to full council for a vote. And I see we have new business as our next agenda item. I don't have any new business.
I don't either.
Okay. I just really want to thank this committee and Laura and really our president. I feel like these kind of public hearings, they're really thoughtful, and I maybe it was a little earlier today, but I feel like this second time around in this discussion, it really got to some nuance, and I'm really proud of what we did here tonight. And so with no new business, I would entertain another motion to adjourn.
I second that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, let's see.
And I think
All
Mary
right.
Ann's seconded.
She's already seconded. Yes,
Yeah.
I was just entertaining that motion, giving it pouring it a drink and putting on the television for it. But no, yes, we've got. Okay, my filter's off. We gotta wrap it up with a roll call before I say something silly. After 3 hours, I start, saying kooky things. So yes, Laura, thank you.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for your time. I know it was a long one, but I think we did good.
4 hours.
Thank Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Thank
know.
you.